They have to, they're installing, I think will force a lot of the change and people are certified. And I think as more people say, you can't change something for what your own mind says, then, there's something wrong. Like $99 for a 7-day trip to Orlando and Disneyland, that doesn't compute anybody can offer that. They're trying to steal your money.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're listening. This is 2026 episodes. We are coming in hot this year. We're making a few adjustments. I've got some things working in the background that you guys are going to see coming up. Hopefully, you enjoyed all the sales that happened earlier this year. Actually, this show is being recorded around the time that the sales are going on, but it's not being released until 2026. So we are actually time traveling. But we have a very, very special, important guest to the industry. Who is today's guest?
Dell Skluzak from Golden, Colorado, owner of the Pipe Knife Company.
And Gary Duncan, operations manager for Novus Glass.
Me and Gary, we work together.
Yep.
Actually, we'll work together a little bit more now since, restructuring and everything happened.
Correct.
But with that being said, okay, so we're talking pipe knife today. Pipe knife. You guys, give me a little bit of this history of pipe knife because we've all used your tools. We've heard of your tools. It's been a name that's been in our industry since I believe since I got in 03, but go ahead and give me
Long
the
before
rundown.
that. Yeah, so actually Gary has a connection to the original pipe knife company. But the original pipe knife was started by three brothers called the High Brothers, and Gary can give you the name of all three of them. But they were managers at Safelite Auto Glass, and it was about the time where the windows became a bit more swept, and it was making it difficult to get in between the dash and the windows. And so they created this tool to make that slice along, the bottom part of the glass. Um, I have so many people come up to me and say, "Hey, I invented the pipe knife," and I always say, "Yeah, but you were not the one who patented it,"
All right.
and which the three brothers did. And at the very beginning, it was called the Wonder Knife, and the first distributor of it was Summer and Maca. And Gary, as a youth, used to make spending money by screwing in the covers and
Right. Using the press.
and all of that. And so that was, I think it was patented in 1987. And in 1993, the brothers decided that they wanted to go a different direction. And so I ended up buying the company. At that time, I was working for what was then known as Alcoa. I was running some manufacturing facilities for them, and I wanted to do something on my own. So I bought that company in '93. I also bought a fiberglass manufacturing company in '93, and then my brother ran it for 6 years. And all we had was the pipe knife. There was one product, and we did quite well with it. Uh, our competition at that time, and still our number one competitor, is a piece of conduit pipe that
Right.
technicians smash a razor blade down on and curve it and do all of that. Uh, but in '99, I got married. My wife was from this area in Denver. And so I decided to leave my corporate position and started growing the pipe knife company. Sold the fiberglass company to a composite company in Germany. And I embarked on building the pipe knife company. We ran the company out of the crawl space in my house, and I started private labeling by putting different handles on it. So I would do it for Samaka, and by that time I had grown a few more customers, and we actually went into the building restoration business, where companies who were cutting out expansion joints in concrete and buildings started using the knife also. And I literally would keep the handles in my crawl space, and I'd get an order and I'd crawl in and bring the handles out and make it in my basement. And then we started acquiring companies, and I took over my garage spot when I bought Reed Tool Company. And I joked that my wife said, we had to do something different about this. So we dug out the crawl space in our house and put in a little factory, and we hired a lady who would come to our house 5 days a week, and she would work down there and assemble knives. And we kept growing the business. And then I took over the garage spot. And my wife at that point kiddingly said, the divorce is going to be a lot more expensive than getting a warehouse. So we moved into the warehouse. We bought the warehouse. We're now in 3 warehouses. We've acquired 9 different companies. Half the business is in auto glass, and the other half is in building restoration. There's some bleed over between the 2 tools, so it was a natural. And after 25 years, I'm an overnight success. So
25 years overnight success. That is that has to be the definition of overnight success. Like these one-hit wonders been singing since they were kids kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like it's not like it's just you just wake up and you have the success. It's always the struggle to get to that one-time success, but it's not one-time success. Now, like I said, I came in 03. And one of my first tools, because I bought a toolkit off of the gentleman who trained me because he was going in to be an EMS. So then he sold me everything he had. And there was he called it a saber. And it had the pipe knife logoing on it. Did you guys ever make one that was long that was called a saber? Or am I
yeah,
making that up? Or is that something he just called it?
It was there.
nope, it was there. So Equalizer continued to make a conduit pipe, and it just had 1 rivet in it, and you would put the 2-notch utility blade in it, and depend on gravity and the fact that the technician would always pull forward on that blade, because if you went backward, the blade would actually come out. And um, technicians really liked that particular knife because it was very thin. And so I came along and I said, that's unsafe because the blade would fall out. So I patented a inverted T design in a blade, and then I put 2 rivets in the conduit knife, and you could actually lock that blade in. And I have the patent on the blade and the knife, and then Equalizer picked that up. And the single hole one was called the Samurai, and then the one I had is what you called it. And that knife is still out there, but with the advent of a lot of wire cutout tools becoming very prevalent, and then before that, the reciprocating blade um, really started eating into the volume of knives. I still sell them. Every technician probably has a pipe knife or 6. Most of them rattling around hoods of cars somewhere, or on roofs, or on roads. But we still sell just the original pipe knife. We still sell around 40,000 a year of the pipe knife.
Wow, that is a number that just surprised the shit out of me because I know myself, I went away from any form of a long knife, if that's what you want to call what we do, the saber, the pipe knife, the long knife, probably, man, 15 years ago. And I went strictly to scrapers. Personally, it was the real wide utility blade, not utility, but the single edge razor blade scraper, and then went to BTB, and then since I've upgraded to the wing scrapers, and my long knives are doing what you said. They're just rattling around in a toolbox. I still have them. And actually, you want to know, this is crazy, but the main thing I use my pipe knife for now is when I'm
Probably
putting
don't.
open up boxes is one of them, but when I'm because I just did an office in my house and it's cutting drywall.
Yeah, they do work.
Yeah, I use it for cutting drywall because you can just lay that T up there. You can just whoop, whoop, and then follow the T down, and it helps with putting drywall up. So I use mine more for that, and obviously opening boxes. But you're right, I still do have them. So now that you're doing 40,000, you've obviously switched your marketing to other tools. Are you developing tools? Do you just sell tools? Are you warehousing them?
Yeah.
All
So
of the above.
yeah, all of the above. So one of the things I've done is, backtrack a little bit. When I first bought the pipe knife company, um, I forget whether it was Dennis or Brad asked me if I was going to make cutting out windshields my business. And I said, probably not. And he goes, then never cut out a windshield. He said, because then you'll bring your own bias into how you should cut out a windshield. And to this day, I've never fully cut out a windshield. And I've always kept that in the back of my mind. So every time a technician comes up to me and says, hey, you should invent this, hey, you should do this, um, I look at it, I ask around. And so a lot of times I will take people's ideas, work with them, um, give them a royalty, buy their idea or whatever, um, and do that. So I listen a lot, but I really don't have a bias because I'll tell you what, for every technician who invents something and says everybody in the industry is going to use this, there's infinitely as many people on the opposite side who said that's the stupidest tool I've ever seen. Nobody will ever use that.
Yeah.
So, so as you know, technicians, I really look at technicians as artists. They're very passionate about their work. They feel, a lot of them feel, there's only one way to do stuff and it's their way. And I don't quite frankly care if that's how you want. And a lot of people will buy your idea. And I really look at my role as an inventor is to take the individual technician's ideas and to spread it around to whoever else thinks that is a good idea to make their job busier. James, because we all know, Gary knows, this is a tough business.
Yeah.
Um, I admire whenever I go to an open house. I was just down in Phoenix and did a couple open house events for Migrant, and there are some old tough guys that come into this business, and then the younger guys that come into it. I mean, they're very passionate about it, but most of them, come in. Their dad, their uncle, their grandfather was in the business, and they started, sweeping floors and one kid came in Phoenix and said he would take the urethane ribbons that were cut out and he would make figures out of them. And that's how he got into the business. So most young kids when I see are in this, 22, 23, they've been cutting windshields out since they were 14. So I, especially when I hear young people talk about new tools, I listen very carefully because they come up, and not to say they don't want to work hard, but they want to work smarter. So,
And they're the future of the business.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
they definitely are.
Oh,
So.
yeah. I mean, people like myself and Gary. Gary's been in a lot longer than I have, but people like myself and Gary, we're technicians. We're technicians at heart. We're technicians, but we need that next generation, and we
We
need
do.
their ideas because their ideas is going to help our longevity of our careers. Coming up with these tools that help our bodies. And what you said there was right. The bias is. It's been very hard for me at certain points, especially during this podcast and just different points in my life transitioning to keep that open mind. I feel I've done a decent job at it, but there's still those little nagging biases like, oh, that tool's dumb, or oh, that doesn't me. But then you give it a shot and then you're like, well, and then you don't want to admit it because you got that ego involved and you're like, man, motherfucker, this does work, god damn it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I pick stuff up. My crew is very young, and
Mhm.
I'm doing lots of training, but I pick stuff up from them. And I'm happy to do it. I think this industry is always changing, as does the world. And if you're not fluid, you're gonna get left behind.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's good. They have a different perspective, and sometimes it works very well.
Well, being influenced and introduced to your crew, that Nova's crew that you have up there in Denver area, those group of kids, and I say kids even though they're probably adults, but my children
They
are adults, so they're kids.
all live.
Yeah, so they're kids, but I was super impressed. Very, very, very inspired by a lot of them because they had that same passion that I had for the industry when I first got into it. And that takes you a long way. So we can get more and more of that kind of buy-in from the youth, you know what I mean, Gary, like what you have in
Yeah.
your stores. And it comes from atmosphere. If you're a technician, you go into a shop that isn't open-minded and wanting you to learn and wanting you to advance, and they're just wanting you to pump those numbers and not really grow yourself as an individual technician. You know, that you guys obviously are creating a culture and a environment over there that these kids want to learn it. So, you know, congratulations to you on doing that, because that's awesome. I seen the passion they had when I spent that week with them. So
Yeah. Yeah. They really enjoyed that. In fact, they're still can't wait to start cutting more glass. So we're trying to get a little more. We built cutting tables and
that's awesome. That's awesome because it's an art and it's a dying art. You know, like it's something that is a lot of technicians aren't influenced like you and I were with it. You know, it was something you had to do. You know,
yeah, it was just, you had to do it. They were
it was.
cutting double strength, single strength,
Mhm.
laminate. That's
Yep.
part of your daily routine back then.
Absolutely, and it took some of the artistry out of it when Autoglass specialized a little bit and got out of the all
Right.
over glass shops.
Yeah.
But there's still, you know, there's still some, and I'm glad to see that there's some kids that want to learn it, because it is something cool that you can hang your hat on, that you are a technician in other ways than just being ADAS certified and being a great technician when it comes to installing, you know, glass. Now, Dell, you acquired, and at Auto Glass Week, I seen a lot of demos going on, which I need to apologize. I was so backed up and busy. I was supposed to be there for one of the demos, and I was giving a talk. And as soon as the talk was done, I was supposed to shoot over. And you know what? I didn't. So I need to apologize about that, because I got pulled in another direction for the heats. But you were giving demos on
That's
what?
perfectly fine. We forgive you.
Well, thank you for the forgiveness. And actually, I have a show coming out, not the end of no, well, not the last week in November, but the week after that, the last week in November, with someone who helped you a lot, which was Daniel Jimenez.
Yes,
He was on the show and we talked about it a little bit, but let's talk. You bought a company that a lot of us really love, the setting tool that you purchased. Which one was that?
that would be the ProSet tool that Christian Foss invented 8, 9 years ago,
Yeah.
along with a couple of you guys that you know were at the beginning of it and helped Christian along the way. Yeah, that's been a road. In fact, it's just a year, I think, today since we inked the paper on
Oh,
that.
wow. Time's flying.
Nice. Yeah, well, happy anniversary on that one. So I wasn't involved in any of the originality of it. I wasn't part of any of that kind of stuff, but I was part of wanting the tool as soon as I seen it when Mr. Jeffrey Wacker had it at Autoglass Week in 2019. I watched it, immediately went and bought it, and then I went there in 20/21 and took it to Orlando and competed with it in the Autoglass Tech Olympics and took third place that year. And I'll remember I set the back glass with it. And I had a couple hiccups because I'd never set a back glass with it. It'd always been windshields. So I had a couple hiccups that I had to learn on the fly, which is one of the reasons why I really tell technicians, do not change a single thing you do in your daily routine and then go try to compete with it, because it
Right.
doesn't work. Because that's what I did. I think the one thing that I really enjoy about the ProSet tool, coming from someone like myself and like Gary and Dell, you may have set a few windshields enough throughout the years to know it's such a natural movement as far as replicating a two-person set, that it's easy to learn. Have you noticed a lot of the younger technicians having trouble learning that because they're not used to those two-man or one-man sets by hand?
I a couple of my guys have struggled with it a little bit, and I think it's because they're overthinking it is the thing. And then you touched right on it. You got to just, the same movement essentially as if we're hand setting it by just one of us or two of us. You're swinging it over the car to hand to the other guy. It's basically the same thing. And the only difference being is you want to pay attention to your side more so than the other side. If you're single setting it, you're always watching the other side first and then your side. So that's the main thing. But I would say 75% of my guys are picking it up pretty easily the first time they try and use it. So
And having been involved now for a year, and we've sold over 250 of the tools since we bought it. We really started shipping February 1st. You see just a whole array of people who buy it. Some people say, I finally bought it because my body's wearing out. And then you see younger people buying it because they're just getting started and it's what they're told to get. But in all cases, you've got to learn to use the tool, right? One of the things that amazes me about an auto glass technician is the average car, somebody told me, has 7 individual pieces of glass on it. Side glass and back glass and vent glass and all of that. And all of them require specialty knowledge. And so everything you have to know to change, you don't know what's going to come at you that day. And so the pro set is not the same technique on every glass. So
Mhm.
you've got to reach out to the industry, because I'll guarantee you, a guy like Gary or a guy like Jeff Wacker or a guy like yourself, um, you've done probably just about everything, and Christian has done just about everything, but it's just not, oh, just pick it up and set the glass in. So you got to learn, you got to practice a little bit. But once you learn how the tool works, I think too many people fight it.
Mhm.
And and then the thing is like that, it's like any tool, like a grinder. People will wear out a grinder. It's because they push it too much,
Right.
and they're not letting the tool do what it was meant and designed to do. And also because I think the male ego is a little, I'm going to fight and power through this. It's like, well, it shouldn't be this easy. I must be doing something wrong. So
I think that's part of it.
yeah. So, and as Christian will always say, is the motion, the design was meant to mimic how your body does it. So you don't fight your body when you're doing something, you let your body do it. And then I think once you get over that barrier mentally, you can do it. So, but we're talking about biases with the pro set. Um, there are many passionate people, especially in the various private groups, about the
Mhm.
pro set and about setting tools.
Yep.
And everybody has their favorite, right?
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and what I always say is I don't care what setting tool you use, because there's a gamut. We make the quick set also, which is
Mhm.
on the lower side of the cost spectrum. And then there's, I think it's, the sidekick from Equalizers. There's the setting stick. There's, what's the one that Dan Bamer make?
The Rolodex.
The
Rolodex.
Rolodex.
Yeah.
And that's kind of in the medium. And then there's the little buddy, and then there's the Solo Neo, and then there's WRD. So I don't care which one you buy, but for God's sakes, buy one. They're all basically made in the United States. Um,
And they make your job easier
yeah,
and more precise.
and it'll extend your life
It definitely
as a technician. Um, I always say buy the quick set or the pro set, because I make those. Um, the only thing that bothers me on Facebook is when you get into these discussion are the people who, just badmouth the tool.
right.
And if you can't say something good, just say why you like something else. Don't trash the other tools, because there's hundreds, if not thousands, of people using those tools successfully.
And I've had all of them except for the Quickset. I have not, as of yet, used. And they all work. They really do. They all have their place. You just pick the one that works best for you.
And
Yeah.
what you said there, with the bias and, this is the only tool, that's not, it's not. You need a varied toolkit, like what you're talking about. One of my big things that I'm kind of trying to, and I talked to the guy at, oh my God, I know he's going to hate me, PC from GT Tools. And I've also been in conversations with the Panther Pro guys and a few other, is that introductory toolkit. Okay. A lot of the toolkit companies, after having some conversations, the introductory toolkit is not practical anymore. They're throwing in their tools they don't really sell all that much anymore. Like tools to take off clips that we don't even, you don't, So the one thing that I would love to see in this, I think the price point of the setting tool is going to be the biggest one, is going to be a actual entry level toolkit that can, it can, you can actually have it cheaply enough to where someone can get into it for about $1,500, and they could do most of the cars on the road currently with the no moldings and the things. So I'm trying to figure out a way, and it will be that quick set, I think, or the Pro 6 or something, and then a bat or a cord tool, because it needs to have a good setting tool, a good caulking gun, a good cord tool, good set of cold knives, a good set of scrapers, and then your basic hand tools to take off moldings. Your plastic pry bars, your a socket set that goes up to 19. Whether it starts at quarter and then 3/8, because you need that for some of the back glasses and things like that. Um, is that something that you guys are in the works with as well, as an introductory toolkit that actually makes sense?
Well, we actually have a very elementary introductory kit. Um, I got it by talking to a lot of technicians. It sells for around $200, but it is just a basic mechanical toolkit. And what I sell it as is for two reasons. Number one, as you know, unfortunately in this industry, vans get broken into a lot, and then you've got to replace a lot of stuff. So when that happens, this kit, and I've already been told this multiple times by my distributors who carry it, the technician will come in and say, "I just need some tools. I got to cut something out today." And then for somebody who's training, this, it's got a cold knife, it's got trim tools, it's got mirror tools, it's got pick tools, scrapers and things like that. It's like, here's the kit. Go to the junkyard, see if you can take some glass out, learn how to do it, do 5 or 6 or 10 or whatever, and then decide, okay, now what battery caulking gun do I want? What setting tool do I want? And as if you look at the Equalizer catalog, right, it's 120 pages of things that 10% is maybe what you need and 90% is what you like to have. But
Yeah.
That's
but
right.
but then go find out. But your idea of a kit with an elementary setting tool, which of course I would do the quick set because I make it, um, and then we also distribute and we sell the Milwaukee gun. Most people will in the industry probably say that that's the best gun on the market. But even then, you get into, are you going to do a 10 ounce? Are you going to do a 465? You're going to do a 600? And so one other thing that I've done is I've made a conversion kit for the Ryobi. So you can
Oh.
take 10 ounce and you do a 465 in it, or you can do a 600 milliliter. And as you know, a lot of people poo poo the Ryobi. But
I
I think,
used it for many
yeah,
years until Mark had seek
I
a power push.
I don't know, man. Like, cause I did a post where Craftsman now has one, and it's like $55, and then the Harbor Freight Bauer brand now has one, and I think it's like $39 without a battery. So I mean, there are some cheaper models, but I mean, realistically, you can get a couple years out of one of those. You take care of it.
Listen, that Ryobi I had since 2004 and still works. Same battery.
yeah. Well, and what a lot of people don't know is Milwaukee and Ryobi are made by the same company.
Yeah, there's a
Uh,
lot of them. Like, there's a lot of them like that. Like, they may have a couple other different little parts to keep the price down, but like Black and Decker owns a lot of like tool companies, and then like there's a lot that owns like who owns Mac and Snap-on? They're under the same umbrella, right? Or is it Matco and Snap-on? There's a big
Well,
umbrella that,
yeah, well,
that
Snap on the Blue Point line, so, but at the end of the, part of it too on your caulking guns, it all depends on what urethane you're shooting.
Mhm.
If you're San Antonio and you're shooting, was it Dow Express is pretty viscous.
yeah.
You don't need an 18-volt Milwaukee, pushing that stuff out. But if you're using the new primerless ones, which are really, really tough, you're going to need that extra power. So you also have to fit the tool to, what you're going to do day in, day out for the material.
And that's a very important point. And I want our listeners to kind of rewind and just kind of really let this sink in, because urethane has its own characteristics depending on which urethane you choose, whether it be brand or line within that brand. I personally love a very viscose urethane because I want to be the one that decks my product. I don't want the product to deck itself with the weight of the glass. I want to make sure I deck it to the height I want it. So I need and I've worn out some Milwaukee caulking guns because I need a very viscous urethane. I mean, I'll use whatever I'm told if I have to, put decking blocks or whatever it might be. But for me, if I'm choosing a urethane, I'm going to choose a very viscous urethane. So the higher viscosity needs those higher power pushing guns. But if you're not using that, a nice 12-volt Milwaukee will do you well. And I do have a bias here because, everything I own is Milwaukee. So that's me. But, get yourself a Craftsman, get yourself a Bauer, get yourself a Ryobi, get yourself something that might not need all the push of a DeWalt or a power push or, just a 12-volt version of those tools. Because if you're not using something that is going to require all that extra pushing power, why? You're wasting money at that point if you don't need it.
Right. And it's the guys who get into the business and go out and spend $15,000, $20,000 before they've really taken much class out. It's the same person who decides, okay, I'm going to get, into kayaking or canoeing, and they go out and buy the top end stuff and they don't even know how to use it, versus maybe buying something used or at the lower end and saying, okay, I paid for it, I'm not in debt,
Right.
and now I can step up. So that was
Well,
if I was getting in this business, I I don't need to have the sparkles. I just want to do the job.
okay. Remember that too. You don't need the sparkles. You just need to do the job. And when I was on a budget of when I first got into it, I got lucky, $250 for the guy's tools that trained me. There wasn't everything in there, but there was a lot of things in there. And at that time in my life in 2003, $250 was like taking food out of my kids' mouths. So I really need to
Right.
make sure I wanted to do it. Okay. And that's what, I've always heard my story, knows that was a conversation my wife and I had. And that's why I became so passionate about what I did. Spent a lot of time in junkyards, like you said, to learn the job or whatever. But what you said, Dell, I'm one of those guys. If I decide I'm getting into something, I'm fucking getting into it. So don't be like James in this situation, because when I get into something, I really get into it, whether it be road bikes. I got 5 kayaks in my garage and I haven't kayaked in like 3 years. I just get into it. You know what I mean? I got the new motocross bike, which is not new because I wanted something older because I wanted to rebuild it myself. I wanted to do that midlife crisis where you redo the car, but it's motocross bike for me. So that's what I did. When I get into something, I get into it. So don't do that. Just get yourself what you need, that baseline tooling. But I will say, in your kit, and Dell, let's discuss it if you want, but in your kit, your no frills kit, you need to have a power cocking gun, you need to have a
Yep.
good set of suction cups, you need to have a wire tool, and you need to have a setting tool. That's my no frills, and it has to be there because I was lucky. I only had to hand pump for 6 months during my auto glass career before the power caulking gun came for me. So I'll never go without a power caulking gun. So you have to have that. That has to be in your elementary kit. Does it not, or do you think that you can get by with just a 32-to-1 caulking gun?
No,
You've got to have a
need it.
power gun.
You need it.
You absolutely need it. Oh
Yeah, I
my
mean,
goodness.
that's like saying you can go drive a car without a key. You can push it, but that's hard, right?
Right.
You
That's
better be
hard.
hell all the way, both ways.
Yeah. Sorry, I had to get my tea. My throat was getting a little dried out there. So, all right. So we've talked about that toolkit. Hopefully, come the first of the year, I can assemble something and put a show out. I watched a YouTube video yesterday that was really cool. It was a master mechanic. He went to Harbor Freight and put together a $1,500 toolkit for the apprentice or starting out mechanic coming into the, right out of the school or becoming an oil
Right.
change person. So I love that idea. I've watched a lot of those videos. So I was kind of wanting to do something like that for our listeners, do a video like that. Your mobile setup, here's your van, here's what a toolbox looks like. This is what you're going to get, kind of bold. But hopefully some more tool companies join that, because I know I talked to PC about it. I looked over their kit. Their kit is good, but it has a lot of tools in there that don't really need to be there. They're kind of obsolete, or, yes, you might need them if you start doing more of the older vehicles, but realistically, 2010 is probably the oldest vehicles you're going to really work on nowadays, unless you're a specialty shop. That's my
Right.
opinion.
So if you went at this a different way, James, if you say, what are the top 10 glasses that are replaced?
Oh yeah, yeah, okay.
So take those top 10 glass and say, what is every tool I need to replace those top 10? because you're not going to start a new technician out on a Tesla. You're
No.
not going to start them out on a Peterbilt or whatever. You're going to say, here's the top 10. And maybe say, okay, what do I need if I took those top 10? And you guys probably can rattle them off like that, right?
Mhm.
It depends on market, but yeah, they're probably, they're basic ones. Your new Hondas and Subarus,
Yep. And
trucks.
why you have to, your socket set has to go up to a 19 is because, you know, you got 17s on Hondas, and some of the rear glasses, you got to take that motor off and it's a 19 and blah 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 blah.
So,
But
what I dedicate to you is in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we will put together a plan and we will come out with a kit,
Right
beautiful,
on.
and
beautiful.
we'll call it the Pink is Beautiful kit.
Fuck yes. Fuck yes. I love that. I love that. That is amazing. So yeah, I think that's great. I can't wait to see what you put together. Because I really do want to, like last year I did. Would you get into the auto glass? Should you get into the auto glass business in 2025, given the market? And I'm going to do another one in 2026. And because I do think that there needs to be, we're slow right now. Everyone's slow right now. Okay. The climate is not building confidence for people to go out and spend a bunch of money. So it is slow right now. And we have a lot of back and forth with the insurance companies and TPAs and links, and then SGC. They're going back and forth with this lawsuit thing, or with the whatever that whole thing is they're doing. So there's a lot of uncertainty in the market right now, but it'll come back around. It always does.
It will.
You know, I mean, us older guys, guys and gals, we had to go through those ebbs and flows, you know, to where you could realistically set your watch by when you were going to be slow. You know, I mean, every year you could be like, okay, we're taking vacation in October because September we're going to be starting to slow down. October is going to be a little bit slower. February we're going to really kick off and then be good through the summer. But we
Well, and
make
they had layoffs regularly all the time back then,
yeah.
in the early 90s,
Mm.
80s. There were layoffs every year pretty much.
So the only thing I would suggest, I just did Glass Build America down in Orlando, and that's all flat glass and glaziers. And when you compare like Auto Glass Week to a Glass Build America, I mean it's pennies to dollars. The amount of money, the amount of you know different specialties, and that those fields. If I was going into auto glass, I would also learn to do flat glass.
You have
Because,
to.
yeah, because there's so many opportunities. When it does get slow, there's so many people out there. You just drive around neighborhoods if you want, you know, broken glass in houses or mirrors or patio doors or anything like that, and you already have 60 to 70% of the knowledge of how to take glass out.
Correct.
And frankly, it's just a few more tools.
Hmm.
There isn't a lot in there. So if if somebody asked me, hey, how do I mitigate the slow times in auto glass, I would say, well, learn to do a little bit of flat glass.
Yeah. Yeah, because all you need is a bolt caulking gun, a 5-in-1, a dead blow, a set of cutters for your stops and for your vinyl, a couple pry bars. Yeah, I mean nothing crazy will you need for, and also most buildings glaze to the outside, so you don't even have to worry about going into some people's businesses, maybe to clean up a little bit, but realistically you're outside the whole time. I think
Yep.
most residentials glaze to the outside too, depending on some of the Pella windows. Anyways, I had to work in that field as well because we were an all-encompassing glass shop at Richardson. We did everything, so I had to learn pretty much everything. And I think that definitely helped my skill set when it come to auto glass, and it diversified. And when we were slow, I could go help glazers to make sure I maintained my hours and wasn't getting laid off, because it's something that glazing does go year round, whether it
It
be
does.
commercial, residential, architectural, which there is a difference. Like, a lot of people look at me funny when I say architectural and commercial. There is a difference. There is a difference between the two, because architectural, you're building it from scratch. You get a hole, and then you have to build the framing, you have to install the framing, you have to fabricate everything. So that's what I mean when I say architectural, because that's what we did. But you're right.
Yeah, it amazes me how the people are conditioned. And like, you take a shower door. I know of shower doors where people pay $4,000 or $5,000 for shower enclosures, and the people want to pay for quality. But then yet you take that same person who wants to change the glass in their BMW, and they want to go to Fred's truck down the street, change any glass for $99. and they expect insurance to pay for it, but yet they're driving around on $800 tires and they think nothing of changing those. But
Right.
here's the piece of glass that's 30 to 40% the structure integrity of the car, and they want to go cheap. So I know this is discussed widely in auto glass, but how do you change people's perception? I just don't know. The only thing I can say is that the barrier to entry to change out windshields is so low. What do you need? You need a utility knife and access to a tube of silicone and a manual caulking gun. And you go to a junkyard, you cut out a piece of glass and say, "Hey, I'll replace that." That's the problem, right? It's you fight
Also,
that so much.
also, our distributors are not creating a barrier of entry for skilled. They'll sell to
Correct.
anybody and everybody. And I
Right.
get it. You need to make money. And if you're in business, you need to sell. And if you're only selling to qualified technicians, that really limits your sale. But you could, there are ways around it that much smarter, business people than I would be able to figure out and make it work. But the barrier to entry to our industry through our suppliers, if they couldn't buy supplies, I mean, yeah, they go to a junkyard and cut a piece of glass out, but you're not going to have glue. You're not going to have, yeah. So anyways, the barrier entry for, the supplier selling to anybody and everybody with a pulse is also something that is hurting, the market for selling that, you must use a certified or a qualified technician because anybody can do it.
Well, and that's why the person on the phone is so important. The immediate education of the customer when you've got them on the phone for 2 to 5 minutes
Mm-hmm.
is imperative. I get a lot of jobs over the years have, and I'm $100 more, but it's that quick education and confidence in speaking to them. Just knowing my craft over the guy that's just wants to save them some money and is doing it for $50 over their cost and runs out of an old Mazda truck that's beat to hell.
Yeah. Well, I mean, general contractors, what you said there, Dell, is people hopefully one day will start respecting the fact that their vehicles cost as much as homes did, and that it's an investment like their home is. And most people I know won't even let a handyman in their house if they're not licensed, let alone a general contractor to build something. I mean, yeah, there's some DIY stuff because I DIY. But like, if I'm paying somebody to do something like I just did for when I put this fireplace into fireplace into my office here, I had a licensed plumber come in to do it. I ain't touching that. And I'm sure as hell I ain't letting no handyman that's not licensed, come in and do it, So I think that that's another thing is like when the, the customers understanding that this is an investment, it's not just a transportation anymore. I think that may help. I don't know. There's so
Well,
many variables.
I think the technology of the windshield now becoming, basically a high-end computing windscreen is going to force that change, right?
Hmm.
Because at that point, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road, you can't have somebody come in and just put a piece of glass in. They have to, they're installing the computer
Hmm.
basically. So
Get there.
it's that I think will force a lot of the change, and people are certified. And I think as more people say, you know, you can't change something for what your own mind says, then there's something wrong. It's like $99 for a 7-day trip to Orlando and Disneyland. That doesn't compute that you anybody can offer that. They're trying to steal your money.
Hmm.
I think part of the technology will override that, but there's a washout period too. For the technician who isn't getting into ADAS or have access to it now, the number of vehicles that they can replace is getting smaller and smaller. Kind of like the pipe knife company for auto class, smaller and smaller. So,
But
Small,
that
yeah, you had to
yeah,
diversify.
yeah. Well, that's true. I went from one product. We now sell over 1,000 different items.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but
yeah, and
yeah, you
also,
you got to get better.
yeah, and then the fact that a lot of the computing parts that are going to start being ruined because of leaks, because of installation practices that are damaging parts. We're already starting to see it. It's going to be a growing pain, I think, over the next 5 years when we're trying to flush out those ones that have been doing the bottom feeder work because you're starting to see where people are coming in with their cameras urethaned into brackets And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, now the customer has to rebuy all that, because the glass company that's helping them fix it isn't going to buy that camera for them, because the last guy decided to urethane it up, or cameras that are getting, destroyed because of water or because of cut wires or whatever. And it's not just the camera, it's leading to a bunch of other stuff. Like it's everything's linked together. So if your camera's out, then your heptech seats don't work, then you're not being worn anyways. But yeah, I think that it's going to be probably a good 5 years of growing pains for us to really figure out how to get the public involved in the buy-in of, you need to use somebody who's qualified and may charge a little bit more. Like you said, the guy that's charging $50 over top of cost on your BMW with lane keep assist is going to be like, well, the same person trying to sell you a week-long stay at Disney for $100.
Yeah.
No, I think that, yeah. Well, we're coming up on 45 minutes. I like to keep these to an hour, but I want to
Okay.
ask you one question real quick, because I've been a fan of his for a while. And I want to know, what's it like to work with VDK Car, Luis at VDK Car, because that guy's mind is something special. My goodness, is it?
Yep.
Yeah, I think in his world, 24 hours is a minute, um, because I don't know when he sleeps, and I don't know how he can keep track of all the ideas. So we actually have done an agreement with Luis. We're going to start bringing some of his unknown tools to the market. In fact, we've got a couple here. We'll show you. Um, so this this was one of the tools that I think he saw. So this is taking, the urethane trim knives, and then it just goes to this tool that he,
Oh,
and all of his tools have thought, and it's like, what makes it easier. So this was the exact angle that, I don't know if you can see it on the table, but it's the angle that you should be trimming the urethane bead with. And we just got the first prototypes. I took it to a migrant open house down in the Phoenix area, and Jeffrey Wacker used it, really liked it, wants a bunch.
There you go.
But it's one of those cheap, easy things. So we're working on that. And then, here's another idea he had, was these double suction cups that tension up the glass, because Luis doesn't necessarily like the tape. He
yes.
feel he feels it's a impression on the customer that, and this is something like, in the industry, okay, you just charge me $1,000 to put in this piece of glass, and you're putting 3M painter's tape on my car to hold it in. That's what you're doing. So, and we all know there's reasons to do it, but
Yeah.
impressions are the thing. So he's got these going. So we're testing those out. My Luis, which is right over here. You want to get in the picture, Luis? Oh, he's shy.
Did he?
Um,
He's he the one that made that giant ass pry bar that we all love? That thing is
that
amazing.
Yeah. So the big red pry bar, right? Um,
Yeah.
he did not make that. This is actually a upholstery trim tool. In fact, if you look at the back of it, is the upholstery trim tool.
Oh,
Um,
Love that thing.
but
yes.
and that is one of the things I do, is I look around and see what other tools are out there that are useful in the industry. And I like to say about the big red pry bar, it's a tool that nobody can tell you what they're going to do with it,
Mm-hmm.
but there's 100 uses every day for it.
Every
In
day.
fact, if you look at the cover of the Autoglass magazine, the Olympic champion this year,
Mr.
the
Raul.
front cover, he's got the big red pry bar in his hand, and that's what he was using to take out when they broke the back glass. So, you just can't ask for a much better advertisement than that. Plus, it's inexpensive, and the tool use. So yeah, Luis did not do that, but he could have if he wanted to. He right now is really focusing on, the safety aspect, what makes, the work easier and safer for the technicians. And we were down there 4 or 5 months ago, sat down with him, met his family, and he's a live wire. He probably forgets about more ideas in a week than I would even think about in a year. And, for the ability for him to take those ideas, get into the 3D printer, it's amazing to work with him. The problem is he works at a different level, at a different speed, and wants to go faster, faster, faster. And as you know, when you invent tools, you can get them out in the industry and all of that. That's why it's so difficult, I think, for inventors of things. It's a process.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a prototype, you got to get it tested, and then yeah, it's a great idea, but you got to advertise, you got to give away lots of samples, you've got to scale up, you know, to take just the quick set. By the time that all was said and done, I probably had put a couple $100,000 into that with tooling and, you have to give away a lot of stuff and you got to, you can't just buy one or two things. So it's a process.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, some people, there's a lot of great ideas out there.
Right.
Gary has come up with good ideas and you can 3D print them, but you can only 3D print so many until you have to buy another 3D printer.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a process. And just unfortunately, a lot of inventors don't understand the process, but
Yeah.
but they got to be paid too.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like the pipe knife. Yeah, you invented it, but you didn't patent it. So,
Right.
that whole to do a patent, just an elementary patent these days, is $25,000 probably to do it right. It's just so easy to knock it off. I mean, we know the Pro Set is being knocked off over in South Korea and Russia, as is the Quick Set. We we found out on eBay that there were 5 people selling the Quick Set. They had taken our information, and 3 of them were from China, and just duplicate our stuff when we're selling stuff. We have no idea where they were selling it, but then we ordered one, and it was being made somewhere in Texas, and it was just junk. So, but then the whole process to go through and kick them off and trademark their IP, we spend probably 15 to 20% of our time just protecting the IP we have and making sure, maybe that's a little high, but 5 to 10% of the time. But the money involved is expensive too.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, kind of went off the rail there on that.
Hey, that's fine.
Quick copy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I definitely think that, Luis is a special person. I've talked to him a few times on Messenger. He's just not too busy to come on the show. I've tried to get him on a couple times. He's just too busy. So I do thank you for, getting with his ideas and bringing them to market, because I know a lot of us really, really like what he does. Something I want to touch on there with what he said about the professionalism. Stop leaving tape on vehicles. When you
Yes.
release that vehicle, it better have the tape off of it. If you're doing it in a shop, the customer should never see it with tape on it unless they're sitting in your waiting room and you could see to the back where you're working on it. That tape only needs to be, especially with the new urethanes out. If you're using a quality product urethane, 30-minute drive away time, there should be absolutely no reason why you're leaving tape on a vehicle. Just shouldn't happen. It
Correct.
shouldn't happen. I mean, I'm sorry, and I will die on that mountain. It should not happen. You see these vehicles driving down the road with blue tape or green tape or yellow tape or that vinyl tape flapping in the wind or whatever. That could also create a customer callback, but then it starts to adhere to the paint, and paint's coming off easier. Do not leave that on the vehicles, on the customer's vehicle. So if you have something like what Luis invented there, you're not going to leave it anyways, because that's going to cost you a lot of money to have to go
Right.
and get that from the customer.
Right.
So, yeah,
But
I think, yeah.
first thing, you're going to battle. Oh, I never put a suction cup on anybody's vehicle, and it's like,
Yeah, come on.
okay,
Come
so
on.
let's put a piece of adhesive sticky tape on there in
Right.
100-degree weather.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely not. And then let's not dab it on our clothing before we put it on to dull down the adhesive of the backside of the tape, because even though it's painter's tape, it still can pull off. You know what I mean? It
Right.
still wants. So, anyways, that's beside the point. Another tangent going on there. So, anyways, guys, thank you for coming. Thank you for talking to me. Thank you for being part. This will come out in 2026, so can't wait for that to drop. And do you have anything you'd like to say before we get off?
Gary, you want to go first?
Buy a Pro Set. Yeah, just do the job right. It's not that hard anymore. There's so many tools and training available. step up your game. That's what I got to say. Dell?
Yeah, well, number one, happy New Year's to everybody. Wish
Oh, yeah.
everybody safe and prosperous. I'm also going to say we are already dedicated to the same size booth we did at Auto Glass Week this year. We're actually going to put 2 vehicles in, and we're going to do pro sets on one, and then we're going to have a pickup truck, and we're going to use the quick set and the back set to show people how to use that tool. We felt Auto Glass Week 2025 was the best Auto Glass Week we've ever done. It's a big step for a little company like ours to take that big of area, but it paid off overwhelmingly. Our booth was so busy. We missed you, James, but we didn't, because we had Christian there and we had Daniel there, and there were literally dozens of people lined up to watch these demonstrations. So looking forward to Auto Glass Week 2026 in San Antonio. And thanks for putting these out. I think they're a great benefit to the industry, James. Kudos to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And everybody, love each other. And like I always say, the best way to support the show is to invest in yourself and get out there and do the job, like Gary said, correctly.